Moaz was howling with pain, doubled up and holding on to his stomach. The 12-year-old boy facing him wiped the blood off his nose on the sleeve of his torn shirt and swung the tennis racket in his hand to hit Moaz on the leg. Moaz let out another scream and straightened up. With disbelief he looked at his brother, younger by 2 years, who was hitting him with the same racket that Moaz had brought there. This was the third time they had fought this week, and every time it was his younger brother who started the fight. He and Moaz had never had a good relationship and had fought since childhood. But their quarrels had been mostly verbal and included threats. But of late they had become physical. This is what happened today. They had come back from school together. When they got down from the car, the younger brother roughly dragged his bag out of the boot as Moaz was picking up his school bag. In the process, he bruised Moaz's hand, making him wince with pain. "Have you gone blind?" Moaz cried out as his brother walked off nonchalantly. He heard Moaz, turned round, looked at him, then opened the front door, and walked into the lounge. Incensed, Moaz followed on his heels. "The next time you do anything like that, I'll break your hand," Moaz shouted. The younger boy took his bag off his shoulder, put it down, and with hands on his hips, defiantly faced Moaz. "I will. So what will you do? Break my hand? Have you the guts? You'll find out if you repeat what you did today." Moaz headed toward his room, but his brother stopped him, grabbing his bag with all his strength. "No, tell me now." He flung Moaz's bag down. Flushed with anger, Moaz picked up his brother's bag and hurled it away. Without a pause, his brother landed a sharp blow on Moaz's leg. Moaz lunged at him, punching his face, and his nose began to bleed. Despite that, there was no sound from the younger boy. He grabbed Moaz's tie and tried to choke him. Moaz retaliated by grabbing his collar. There was a tearing sound as the shirt ripped. With all his force, Moaz hit his brother on his midriff so as to make him lose his grip on him. "Now I'll show you. I'll break your hand." Shouting and abusing, Moaz picked up the tennis racket that was lying in corner of the lounge. The next thing he knew was that the racket was in his brother's hand and was swung with such force that Moaz could not save himself. Blows rained down on him, on his back and legs. Their older brother came into the lounge in a fit of rage. "What is your problem? You create an upheaval as soon as you get home." At the sound of his voice, the younger brother first lowered and then raised the racket again. "And you, aren't you ashamed of yourself for raising your hand at your older brother?" The eldest brother looked at the hand holding the racket. "No," he retorted without any remorse. He threw the racket down, picked up his bag and walked away. "You will have to pay for this," Moaz called out after him, rubbing his sore leg. "Sure, why not?" He gave Moaz a weird smile. "Get a bat the next time. It was no fun hitting you with a tennis racket. No bones are broken. Check out your nose. It's broken for sure." Furious, Moaz looked towards the staircase where his brother had been standing just a while ago. For the fourth time, Mrs. Samantha Richards stared at the boy sitting on the first chair in the second row by the window. With complete disregard for the class, he was busy staring out of the window. From time to time he would look at Mrs. Richards, and then turn back to the view from the window. This was her first day as biology teacher at one of the international schools in Islamabad. She was a diplomat's wife and a teacher by profession. They had recently arrived in Islamabad. At all her husband's postings, she had taken up teaching assignments in the schools attached to the embassy, continuing the syllabus and teaching schedule of her predecessor Ms. Maryam. After a brief introduction to the class, Mrs. Richards began explaining the function of the heart and the circulation system and drew a diagram on the board. She looked at the student who was looking distractedly out of the window and, using a time-worn technique, she fixed her gaze on him and stopped speaking. A hush fell over the class. The boy turned back to the class. Meeting his gaze, Mrs. Richards smiled and resumed her lecture. For a while she continued to keep her gaze on the boy who was now busy writing in his notebook. Then she turned her attention to the class. She believed the boy was embarrassed enough not to let his attention wander. But just a couple of minutes later she found him looking out of the window again. Once more, she stopped her lecture, and he turned to look at her. This time she did not smile. She continued addressing the class. As she turned to the writing board, the student again turned to the window. A look of annoyance crossed her face, and as she fell silent again, the boy looked at her with a frown and looked away. Beyond the window, his attitude was so insulting that Mrs. Samantha Richards's face flushed. "Salar, what are you looking at?" she asked sternly. "Nothing," came the one-word reply. He gave her a piercing look. "Do you know what I am teaching?" "Hope so." His tone was so rude that Samantha Richards capped the marker she had in her hand and slapped it down on the table. "If that is so, then come up here and draw and label this diagram." She erased the figure on the board. The boy's face changed a myriad colors. She saw the students in the class exchange glances. The boy stared coldly at Samantha Richards as she cleaned the last trace of her diagram from the board. He left his seat, moving swiftly. He picked up the marker from the table and with lightning speed, in exactly 2 minutes and 57 seconds, he had drawn and labeled the diagram. Replacing the cap on the marker, he slapped it down on the table just as Mrs. Richards had done, and, without looking at her, returned to his seat. Mrs. Richards did not see him tossing down the marker or walking back to his seat. She was looking in disbelief at the diagram, which had taken her 10 minutes to make, and which he had completed in less than 3 minutes. It was far better than her work. She could not find even a minor flaw in it. Somewhat embarrassed, she turned to look at the boy. Once again he was looking out of the window. Wasim knocked on the door for the 3rd time. This time he could hear a mama inside. "Who is it?" "A mama, it's me." "Open the door," said Wasim, standing back. There was silence on the other side. A little later, the lock clicked and Wasim turned the doorknob to enter. A mama moved towards her bed, with her back to Wasim. "What brings you here at this time? Why did you turn in so early?" "It's only 10 now," replied Wasim as he walked in. "I was sleepy." She sat down on the bed. Wasim was alarmed to see her. "Have you been crying?" It was a spontaneous remark. Amama's eyes were red and swollen and she was trying to look away. No, I wasn't crying. Just a bad headache." She tried to smile. Wasim, sitting down beside her, held her hand, trying to check her temperature. "Any fever?" he asked with some concern. Then he let go of her hand. "You don't have fever. Perhaps you should take a tablet for your headache." "I have." "Good. Go to sleep then. I had come to talk to you but you're in no state." Wasim turned to leave the room. Amama made no effort to stop him. She followed him to the door and shut it behind him. Flinging herself on the bed, she buried her face in the pillow. She was sobbing again. The 13-year-old boy was engrossed in a music show on TV when Tayaba peeped in. She looked at her son somewhat uncertainly, and entered the room, irritated. "What's going on?" "I'm watching TV," he replied without looking at her. "Watching TV? For God's sake, are you aware that your exams have started?" Tayaba asked, standing in front of him. "So what?" he said, annoyed. "So what? You should be in your room with your books, not sitting here watching this vulgar show," Tayaba scolded him. "I have studied as much as I need to. Now please move out of my way." His tone reflected his irritation. "All the same, go in and study." Tayaba stood her ground. "No, I will not get up. Nor will I go in and study. My studies and my papers are my concern, not yours. If you were concerned about your studies, would you be sitting here?" Step aside. He ignored Tayyaba's comment and rudely shooed her away. I'm going to talk to your father today. Tayyaba tried a threat. You can talk to him for all I care. What will happen? What is he going to do? I've told you that I've already prepared for my exams. So then what's your problem? This is your final examination. You should be concerned about it. Tayyaba softened her tone. I am not a 4-year-old who you need to nag. I have a better understanding of my responsibilities than you, so don't pester me with your silly advice. Your exams are on. Pay attention to your studies. You should be in your room. I will have a word with your father. What rubbish. Standing up, he flung the remote control at the wall and stomping his feet, left the room. Tayyaba, helpless and humiliated, watched him go. It was New Year's Eve. 30 minutes to go before the new year began. A group of 10 or so teenagers were roaring around the city streets on their motorbikes, doing all kinds of stunts. Some of them wore shiny headbands to celebrate the coming year. An hour ago they were in one of the uptown supermarkets, teasing girls with whistles. They had firecrackers too, which they let off to celebrate. At 11:45 they reached the parking lot of the Gymkhana Club, where a New Year's party was in full swing. The boys also had invitations to the party and their parents were already there. When they got in, it was 5 to midnight. In a few moments, the lights in the hall and the dance floor would be switched off, and then with a display of fireworks on the lawns, the new year would be heralded in. The partying would be on all night. Dancing, drinking, all the festivities especially organized for the occasion by the Gymkhana management. Lights off meant a display of complete abandon. That was what the crowds came for. One of the teenagers who had joined the party was on the dance floor, rocking to the beat and impressing all with his performance. At 10 seconds to 12 the lights went off. Voices and laughter filled the hall as people counted the seconds to the new year. And this rose to a pitch as the clock struck midnight and the hall lit up again. The teenagers were now out in the parking lot, their car horns blaring away, beer can in hand. The youth who was on the dance floor got on the roof of a car. He pulled out another beer can from his jacket and pitched it at the windscreen of a parked car, which shattered with an explosion as the full can hit it. He stood on the car, calmly drinking from the can of beer in his hand. For the last half hour Salar had been watching Cameron trying to master the video game. The score remained the same, probably because Cameron was trying to maneuver a difficult track. Salar was also in the lounge, busy writing notes. From time to time, he would look at the TV screen as Cameron struggled to win more points. Half an hour later, Salar put his notebook away, stifled a yawn, stretched his legs out on the table and crossing his hands behind his head, looked at the TV screen as Cameron started a new game, having lost the previous round. What's the problem, Cameron? Nothing. I got this new game, but it is really tough to score, Cameron said in a tired tone. Let me see. Salar got up from the sofa and took the remote control. Cameron watched silently. In the opening seconds Salar was racing at a speed that Cameron had never reached. The track that had challenged Cameron was like child's play for Salar. It was hard for Cameron to keep his eyes on the car that was racing at a fantastic speed in the first minute, and yet Salar had complete control over it. 3 minutes later, Cameron saw the car swerve, go off the track and explode into smithereens. Cameron turned to Salar with a smile. He realized why the car had been destroyed. Laying the remote control down on the table, Salar picked up his notebook. It's a very boring game, he remarked as he jumped over Cameron's legs and went out. Cameron clenched his teeth as he saw the 7-digit score on the screen. He looked at the door as Salar left. They were both quiet once again. Asjad was beginning to worry. Amama had not always been as withdrawn as she was now. One could have counted the words she had spoken in the last half hour. He had known her since childhood. She was a lively girl. In the first year after their engagement, Asjad had felt happy in her company. She was so quick-witted and vivacious. But in the last few years, she had changed, the transformation having become more pronounced since she started medical school. Asjad felt that she had something on her mind. At times, she would appear to be worried, and sometimes she was distinctly cold and distant, as though she wanted to end their meeting and leave as soon as possible. This time too he had the same feeling. I often think that it is I who insists on our meeting. Perhaps it makes little difference to you whether we meet or not, he said despondently. She was sitting on a garden chair across from him, looking at the creepers on the boundary wall. At Ajad's remark, she fixed her gaze on him. He cast an inquiring glance, but she was silent, so he rephrased his words. My coming here makes no difference to you. Mama, am I right? What can I say? At least you can say no. You're mistaken. No, you're mistaken. Mama cut him short. Her tone was as cold and her expression as indifferent as before. Asjad sighed in despair. Yes, I wish and pray that it may be so, that I may indeed be mistaken. However, talking to you I feel you do not care. What makes you think so? Asjad detected a note of annoyance in her tone. Many things. For one, you never respond properly to anything I say. I do make every effort to reply properly to whatever you say. What can I do if you do not like what I have to say? Asjad felt that she was more annoyed. I did not mean that I did not like what you say. It's that you only say yes or no in response. Sometimes, I feel as if I'm talking to myself. When you ask me if I am well, I say yes or no. What else can I say? If you want to hear a spiel in response to a simple question, then tell me what you would like to hear and I'll say it. She was serious. You could add something to that yes or no. If nothing else, ask me how I am. Ask you how you are. You are sitting here across me, talking to me. Obviously you are quite well. Otherwise, you'd be at home, in bed, sick. Mama, these are formalities. And you know very well that I do not believe in formalities. There's no need for you to ask me how I am. I will not mind it at all. Asjad was speechless. Fine. Formalities aside, one can talk of other things. Discuss something. Talk to each other about what interests us. What keeps us busy. Asjad, what can I discuss with you? You're a businessman. I am a medical student. What should I ask you? About the stock market position? Was the trend bullish or bearish? By how many points did the index rise? Or where you are sending the next consignment? How much rebate did the government give you this time? She went on coldly. Or shall I discuss anatomy with you? What affects the function of the liver? What new techniques have been used for bypass surgery this year? What should be the voltage of electric shocks given to restore a failing heart? These are our spheres of work. So what points of discussion can we have about these that will help us to achieve love and familiarity? I fail to understand. The color of Ajad's face deepened. He was cursing the moment that he had complained to Mama. There are other interests too in a person's life, he said weakly. No. Besides my studies there's no other interest in my life, Mama said decisively, shaking her head for emphasis. After all, we shared interests earlier on. Forget about what happened earlier, Mama interjected. I cannot afford to waste time now. What surprises me is that despite being a businessman you are so immature and emotional. You should be more practical. Asjad was silent. We know our relationship. If you think my practical approach to our relationship shows a lack of interest or indifference, then I cannot do much about it. That I am here with you means that I value this relationship. Otherwise I would not be sitting here having tea with a stranger. She paused a moment, then continued, and whether you coming here or not makes any difference to me. The answer is that we are both very busy people. We are the products of a modern age. I am no here who waits upon you with delicacies while you play the flute. Nor are you Ranja who will indulge me for hours. The truth is that it really makes no difference whether or not we meet or talk. Our relationship, as it is today, will continue, or do you feel it will change? If Ajad's brow did not sweat, it was simply because it was the month of December. There was a difference of 8 years in their ages. But for the first time Asjad felt it was not 8 but 18. And she was the older one. Just 2 weeks ago, she had turned 19. But to him it seemed as if she had raced overnight from teenage to middle age and he had regressed to his pre-teens. She sat across him, legs crossed and eyes fixed on his face, impassively waiting for his response. Asjad looked at the engagement ring on her finger and cleared his throat. You're right, I just thought we should chat more because it would help develop some understanding between us. Asjad, I know and understand you very well. I am disappointed to learn that you think we still need to develop an understanding between us. I thought there already was a good deal of understanding. Asjad had to accept that it wasn't his day. And if you think that talking about business and anatomy will improve the situation, then very well, we'll do that in the future. There was an element of disinterest in Amama's tone. You're not happy with what I said? Why should I be unhappy? This embarrassed him further. Perhaps I said the wrong thing. Not perhaps, but certainly I said the wrong thing. He repeated the last phrase with emphasis. You know how important this relationship is for me. I have many dreams for the future. He took a deep breath. She continued to stare, expressionless, at the creeper along the wall. Perhaps that is why I am so sensitive about it. I have no fears about us. This engagement took place with our consent. His gaze was fixed on her and he spoke with emotion. But suddenly, he felt once more that she was not there. That he was talking to himself. The music from the annex behind the huge bungalow could be heard on the lawn in front of the house. Anyone would have been amazed at the level of endurance of those inside. But one look inside, and one would know the reason behind this level of endurance. The room was full of swirling smoke and a strange smell. Empty cartons of food from a popular restaurant. Disposable plates and spoons. Bottles of soft drinks. And scraps of leftovers were strewn all over the carpet which was stained by ketchup. The 7 boys in the room were sprawled on the carpet. Empty beer cans were scattered around. This was not all. They had been entertaining themselves with drugs too. This was the 3rd time in the last 2 months that the boys had gathered here for an adventure of this kind. So far they had experimented with 4 different drugs. The first time it was a drug that one of them had found in his father's closet. The next time it was a drug which a schoolmate had bought from a club in Islamabad. Then it was something acquired from an Afghan in a Rawalpindi market. Every time they had combined drugs with alcohol, procuring which was no problem. Each time this happened 6 of the 7 boys ended up completely stoned. Even now it was only the 7th boy who was in his senses. His face was covered with acne, and he was dressed in a dark blue shirt with its collar turned up Elvis Presley style, and hideous gray jeans which had Madonna's face adorning each knee. He opened his eyes to glance at the others around him. His eyes were red but not because he was in a stupor like them. A little later he straightened up and shaking the remaining drug from the little container out into a cone. He pulled out a straw and began sniffing it. Then he threw away the straw and taking some of the drug on a fingertip, tasted it very cautiously. Almost instantly, he spat it out. The stuff was of excellent quality, but his expression showed that he had not enjoyed the experience. He swallowed some beer as if to clear the taste of the drug from his mouth. The other boys lay around on the carpet, totally intoxicated and unaware of themselves. He looked at them thoughtfully as he drank from the beer can. His eyes, though swollen, were bright enough. The drug had not knocked him out fully. This had happened the last 3 times too, though his friends had been knocked senseless after taking drugs. The effect on him was not so pronounced. The first 2 times he had left them in their stupor and had driven home. Late in the night, this time too he wanted to get away. The odor of the drugs in the room repulsed him. He stumbled as he tried to stand up. He straightened up and picking his key and wallet off the floor. He turned off the stereo. He looked around the room as if trying to remember something. Then he turned towards the door and sitting down again, put on his joggers, tying their laces around his ankles. Finally, unlocking the door, he went out into the dark corridor. Groping his way, he went past the main door out onto the lawn. As he was coming down the stairs, he felt his nose was running, and when he touched his upper lip, he felt a sticky liquid on his hands. He switched on the light in the entrance and saw blood on his fingertips. Reaching into his pocket for his handkerchief, he wiped the blood off his fingers and nose. There was a strange sharp sensation in his throat which he tried to clear, but he felt he was suffocating. He took a few deep breaths to ease the constriction and spat 2 or 3 times. Suddenly he felt a tingling in his nose. He doubled over as blood began gushing out of his nose, pouring down the marble stairs like a stream. The prize distribution ceremony was underway at the golf club. Salar Sikander was to receive the first prize in the under-16 competition for his 7 under par score. Applauding when Salar's name was called out, Sikander Usman thought he would have to do something about the cabinet where the trophies were displayed. The trophies and shields Salar would bring home this year would be as many as he had in the past year. All of Sikander's children excelled in their studies, but Salar was different from the rest in winning awards. He was far ahead of them. It was not just difficult to beat this boy who had an IQ score of 150. It was impossible. Clapping proudly, Sikander turned to his wife and whispered, "This is Salar's 13th trophy and the 4th one this year. You keep a record of everything, don't you?" She replied, smiling at her husband whose gaze was fixed on Salar as he received the trophy from the chief guest. "Only for golf, and you know the reason very well. I bet that even if Salar had been playing this tournament with professional players, he would have still won the trophy," he claimed proudly. Salar was shaking hands with the other winners seated around him. Sikander's wife was not surprised by his claim about Salar. She knew that it was not an expression of paternal sentiment. It was the truth. Salar was indeed extraordinary. She recalled when he had played 18 holes at this golf course with her brother Zubair for the first time. The way he had brought a ball that had accidentally fallen into the rough out onto the green was a display of expertise. Zubair was amazed. "I can't believe it." He had repeated this statement endlessly till the end of the game. If the shot from the rough had amazed Zubair, then Salar's putters had floored him. As the ball rolled towards the hole, he leaned against his club and turned around to gauge the distance between Salar and his target. Shaking his head in disbelief, he looked at Salar. "Salar Sahib is not playing well today," muttered the caddy standing by the golf cart behind Zubair, who turned around in surprise. "So he's not playing well?" He looked at the caddy. "Was this a joke?" "Yes, sir. Otherwise the ball would not have gone into the rough," the caddy said. "You have played here today for the first time. But Salar Sahib has been playing here for the last 3 years. That's why I say he's not playing well," he added. Zubair looked at his sister who was smiling benignly. "Next time, I will be fully prepared when I come here. And I will also select the site for the game." Zubair was somewhat miffed as they walked across towards Salar. "Anytime, any place," she confidently challenged her brother on her son's behalf. "I want to invite you to Karachi this weekend. With all expenses paid," Zubair said casually as he approached Salar. "Why?" to play on my behalf against the president of the Karachi Chamber of Commerce. I lost the election to him. But if he loses a golf match, and that too to a child, he'll have a heart attack. So let's settle the score." Salar's mother laughed at her brother's words. But a frown creased Salar's brow. "Child?" he repeated with emphasis, the only objectionable word in Zubair's comment. "Uncle, I think I'll have to play another 18 holes against you tomorrow." Asjad opened the door and entered his mother's room. "Amy, I need to discuss something important with you." "Yes. What is it?" Asjad sat down on the sofa. "Have you been to Hashim uncle's lately?" "No. Is there anything special?" "Mama is over for this weekend." "Very well. We'll go this evening." "Have you been there?" Shakila smiled at him. "Yes. How is she?" "She's come home after a long time," Shakila remarked. "Yes. After 2 months." Shakila sensed Asjad was upset. "Is there a problem?" "Amy, I find Mama a little changed," Asjad said with a sigh. "Changed? What do you mean?" "I cannot explain what I mean. It's just that her attitude towards me is rather strange." Asjad shrugged his shoulders. "Today she took offense to something quite minor. She's not the way she was before. I am not able to figure out the reason for this change." "It's your imagination." Asjad. "Why would her attitude change?" "You are thinking too emotionally." "No, Amy. Initially, I thought I was being oversensitive. But after today I don't think I am imagining things. She treats me in a very offhand manner." "What do you think is the reason for this change in her attitude?" she asked as she put the brush back on the table. "I have no idea." "Did you ask her?" "Not just once, but several times. And, like you, she always says that I am mistaken." He shrugged again. "Sometimes. She says it's because of her studies. Sometimes. She says it is because she has matured now. It's not so far-fetched." "Perhaps that is the reason," Shakila replied pensively. "Amy, it's not a question of her becoming serious. I think she's moving away from me," said Asjad. "You're being silly." "Asjad, I don't believe there's any such issue. You have both known each other since childhood. You know your temperaments." Shakila felt her son's fears were meaningless. "Obviously, changes do take place as the years pass. You're no longer children. Stop worrying over trivialities," she tried to reason with her son. "In any case, Hashim Bai wants the two of you to get married next year. Mama can continue and complete her education afterwards. He wants to fulfill his responsibility," Shakila revealed. "When did he say this?" Shakila was taken by surprise. "Many times. In fact, I think they may have started the preparations." Asjad breathed a sigh of relief. "Maybe that is why Mama is agitated." "Yes, possibly. The wedding should take place next year," Asjad replied with some satisfaction. He was a tall, thin lad of 16 or 17. He had a fuzzy growth on his face and had an innocent look about him. He was dressed in sports shorts and a baggy shirt, and had on cotton socks and joggers. He was in the middle of a crowded road, on a heavy-duty motorcycle which he was racing recklessly without any consideration for traffic lights or oncoming traffic, zigzagging his bike through the traffic. He periodically lifted both his feet off the pedals, performing wheelies. Then, without breaking speed, he turned and changed lanes, going the wrong way through the oncoming traffic. Suddenly he braked with a sharp screech. He raised his hands from the handlebars and the motorcycle slammed full speed into an approaching car. He was flung into the air and thrown down. He had no idea of what had happened. His mind plunged into a dark abyss. The boys stood behind the rostrums on the stage, facing each other. They were both canvassing for the post of head boy, and this was part of the election program. One rostrum had a poster saying "Vote for Salar" pasted on it, while the other had a poster of the other contender. Faizan, At this point, Faizan was telling his audience what he would do for them if elected. Salar watched him intently. Faizan was the best orator in the school and was impressing the boys with his performance in a clipped British accent which was so popular. The excellent sound system carried his voice very clearly, and there was pin-drop silence in the hall, which was sporadically broken by the thunderous applause of his supporters. When Faizan finished half an hour later, the clapping and whistling carried on for several minutes. Salar Sikander also joined the applause. Faizan looked around triumphantly, and seeing Salar clapping, he nodded in appreciation. As Faizan knew well, Salar was not an easy opponent. The compere called Salar to begin his speech. To a roar of applause, Salar began. "Good morning, friends." He paused, and then continued. "Faizan Akbar is certainly an asset to our school as an orator. Neither I nor anyone else can compete with him." He stopped again and looked at Faizan, who looked around with a proud smile. But the rest of Salar's sentence wiped the smile off his face. "If it were only a matter of spinning yarns." Sounds of giggling filled the hall. Salar maintained a serious attitude. "But there's a great difference between an orator and a head boy. An orator has to speak while a head boy has to work." The hall echoed with the applause of Salar's supporters. "I do not have the eloquence of Faizan Akbar," he continued. "I have my name and my record to speak for me. I do not need a stream of words where just a few would do." He stopped again. "Trust me and vote for me." He thanked the audience and switched off the mic. Thunderous applause filled the air. Salar had spoken for 1 minute and 40 seconds. In his typical measured style and calculated words. And in that brief time he had overturned Faizan's ambitions. After this preliminary introduction, there was a question and answer session. Salar responded in his customary brief manner. His longest response was not more than 4 sentences. On the other hand, Faizan's shortest response was not less than 4 sentences. Faizan's eloquence and way with words, which were his strength, now appeared bombastic compared to Salar's short and sharp responses on stage. And Faizan was all too aware of this. If Salar gave a one-line reply to a question, Faizan, out of sheer habit, went on with a monologue. Whatever Salar had said about Faizan seemed to be proving true to the audience. That an orator can only speak, not act. Why should Salar Sikander be the head boy? Came a question. Because you should elect the best person for the job, he replied. Wouldn't you call this arrogance? Came the objection. No, it is confidence and awareness. The objection was refuted. What is the difference between arrogance and confidence? Another pointed query arose. The same as the difference between Faizan Akbar and Salar Sikander, he replied in a serious tone. What difference will it make if you are not appointed head boy? It will make a difference to you, not to me. How? If the best person is not appointed as the leader, it affects the community, not the best person. Again, you are referring to yourself as the best person. Once again, there was an objection. Is there anyone in this hall who'd equate himself with someone bad? Perhaps there is. Then I'd like to meet him. Sounds of amusement rose from the audience. Tell us about the changes Salar Sikander will bring about as head boy. Changes are not talked about. They are demonstrated, and I cannot do this before I become head boy. A few more questions were asked and answered, and then the compere called for the last question. A Sri Lankan boy stood up with a naughty smile. If you answer this question of mine, then I and my entire group will vote for you. Salar smiled. Before I reply, I'd like to know how many people there are in your group. 6, the boy replied. Salar nodded in assent and asked, Okay, what's your question? You have to calculate and tell me that if 952,852 is added to 267,895 and then 399,999 is. subtracted from the total and 929,292 is added to the sum, he read slowly from a paper. Then the figure is multiplied by 6 and divided by 2 and 492,359 is added to the final figure. What would be 1/4 of it? The boy could barely complete his words when Salar's response to this silly question came with lightning speed. 2,035,618.2. The boy glanced at the paper in his hand and, shaking his head in disbelief, began clapping. Faizan Akbar at that point felt that he was merely an actor. The hall was filled with applause. Faizan saw this entire program as nothing more than a joke. An hour later, coming down the stage ahead of Salar, Faizan knew that he had lost the competition to him even before it had begun. He had never felt as envious of this 150 IQ scorer as he did now. Mama Appa, when are you going to Lahore? She looked up from her notes with a start. Saad was slowly cycling around her. Tomorrow. Why do you ask? She shut her file. When you go away. I miss you a lot, he said. Why? She asked with a smile. Because I like you very much and you get toys for me and you take me out for drives and you play with me, he answered in detail. Can't you take me to Lahore with you? Mama was not sure whether this was a suggestion or a question. How can I take you with me? I live in a hostel myself. So where will you live? She asked. He pondered this over as he cycled round. Then you should come more often. Very well. I'll come more often. She smiled at him. You can talk to me on the phone. I'll call you. Yes. That sounds good. Saad liked this idea. He began to race his bicycle round the lawn. Mama looked at him absent-mindedly. Saad was not her brother. He had come to their house 5 years ago. She did not know where he had come from, and was not concerned, but she knew why he had been brought in. He was 10 years old now and had settled in with the family. He was closest to Mama. She often felt very sorry for him. Not because he was an orphan, but it was his future that she felt sad about. Her paternal uncles had also adopted orphans and their future too was a cause for concern for Mama. Book in hand, she continued to look at Saad cycling the garden. Watching him, she was often troubled by such thoughts. But she had no answers. There was nothing that she could do for him. All 4 of them were in Hira Mandi, the red light district of Lahore. They were between 18 and 19 years of age and their appearance gave away their upper class background. But out here neither age nor social background meant anything. Because young boys often frequented the area and the elite were among the most regular customers. The boys made their way through the narrow lanes of the bazaar. 3 of them were lost in conversation, but the 4th looked around with interest and a sense of mystery. It seemed that this was his first venture into this domain, and a later exchange with his friends confirmed this. On both sides of the lane, in open doorways, stood women of every age, shape, size and complexion, fair and dark, beautiful and plain, all heavily made up and dressed in a revealing way. And men of all ages also passed through the lane. The boy observed everything very carefully. How often have you been here? He addressed the boy to his right who laughed and repeated the words. How often? I don't remember now. I haven't kept count. I come here quite often, he said proudly. I don't find these women very attractive. Nothing special about them, the boy shrugged his shoulders. If one has to spend a night somewhere, at least the environment should be pleasant. This is such a filthy place, he said, looking distastefully at the potholes and the piles of garbage in the lane. Besides, what's the point of coming here when you have girlfriends? This place has its own charm and there's no comparison between these women and our girlfriends. Girlfriends can't dance like the women here, the other boy said with a laugh. And today one of Pakistan's top actresses is going to perform. Just wait till you see her. But you had taken me to see her dance, the first boy interrupted. "Oh, that was nothing. Just a mudra at my brother's wedding. But here it's a different story. But that actress lives in a very posh locality. Why would she want to come here?" His tone was somewhat suspicious. "Ask her yourself today. If you want. I don't ask such questions." The other boys laughed at this remark. But the first one looked at him askance. They finally reached their destination at the end of the lane. From a shop near the entrance, they bought garlands of motia which they wound round their wrists, and also on the wrist of the boy who was objecting to being there. Then they bought pan laced with tobacco and also offered one to him. He had probably never had pan before. They went up the stairs. He looked around critically and a look of satisfaction crossed his face when he saw that the place was not only clean but well decorated too. The floor was covered with white sheets and there were bolsters to recline on. Curtains fluttered softly on the doors and windows. Some people had already arrived but the performance had not yet started. A woman with a lovely but fake smile swiftly made her way to them. As she spoke to them, the first boy took in her appearance. She was middle-aged, plastered with makeup and sported masses of rose and motia garlands in her hair. She was dressed in a screaming red chiffon sari and her blouse seemed to have been made not to cover but to reveal her body. She led the boys to a corner of the room and seated them. As soon as he sat down, the first boy immediately spat the pan out into a spittoon nearby. It was hard for him to talk with his mouth full of pan. Besides, he did not quite like its feel or flavor. The other three boys were speaking in low tones. He looked around at the other men in the room who reclined against the cushions with wads of notes and bottles of alcohol in front of them. Most of the older men were dressed in starched white clothes. It was the first time he had seen so many people dressed in white other than at Eid congregations. He himself was dressed casually in black jeans and a black t-shirt like his friends and the younger crowd. A little later, another woman in garish clothes entered the hall and, seating herself in the center, began to sing a ghazal. Musicians accompanied her. After a few songs, she collected the money that had been showered on her and left. Then the famous actress for whom they had all been waiting entered the hall and everyone's eyes were riveted on her. She twirled around and welcomed her admirers with a gracious nod. The musicians did not play this time and loud recordings of raucous songs filled the room. The performer began to dance. The silence that had preceded her performance was broken by applause as the men noisily appreciated her dancing and drinks went around. Some of the more intoxicated men got up and began to dance with her. The only one who sat still watching the performance was the first boy. His face was impassive, but if one looked closely it was obvious that he was enjoying himself. When the actress came to the end of her dance about 2 hours later, most of the men in the hall had passed out. Going home was not a problem for them as they had not come with the intention of going back any time soon. They were there for the night. The 4 boys also spent the night there. The next day, on their way back, one of the boys turned to the first one who was looking out of the car. "So, how was the experience?" "All right," he replied casually. "All right? That's all?" Honestly annoyed, he broke off in mid-sentence. "It's a good place to visit occasionally. What more can I say?" But it did not have that something special touch about it. "My girlfriend is better than the woman I spent last night with," he retorted. Hashim Mabin's entire family was present at the dining table. They were chatting amiably as they ate. Umama was the subject of their conversation. "Baba, have you noticed that Umama is becoming more serious with each passing day?" observed Wasim as he looked at her provokingly. "Yes. I've noticed this over the past few months," Hashim Mabin replied, his eyes searching Umama's face. Umama stared at Wasim as she took a spoonful of rice. "Umama, is there a problem?" "Baba, he talks nonsense and you fall into his trap." I'm serious and busy because of my studies. After all, not everyone is as useless as Wasim, she said with some annoyance. He was sitting next to her and she rapped his shoulder lightly. Baba, what will become of her when she qualifies as a doctor if this is what she is like in the early years of her studies, joked Wasim. It'll be years before Miss Amama Hashim smiles. Everyone smiled around the table. This type of sparring always went on between these two. It was seldom that Amama and Wasim did not argue with each other. But Wasim was also Amama's best friend. Probably their being the siblings closest in age lay at the heart of their friendship. And just imagine that Amama. But she did not let him finish this time. She turned around and landed a fist on his shoulder with all her might. It made no difference to him. What else can we have at home but a doctor with a healing touch? You've just seen a demonstration and you can guess how doctors treat their patients these days. One of the reasons for the rising death rate in our country. Baba, please stop him. Amama conceded defeat as she implored Hashim Mabin. Wasim. He suppressed a smile as he turned to his son who dutifully kept quiet.